Zagaza. Hey, na 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 na. Biggity man,
Hi everybody, I'm super excited for a special Wonderland guest today. Everybody knows from our amazing podcast a couple months ago, Isabel Foxen Duke, emotional eating freedom guru, and someone I respect and love so much is here to talk with us and give us some amazing, deep insights on this topic. Thank you, Isabel.
No problem. So happy to be here.
Yay. Okay, so we just did an interview for the Beauty Bean where we went really, really deep on emotional eating, and I'll post the link to that. But I want to talk a little bit about body acceptance and fat acceptance and get into that conversation a little bit because you have got some great insights on that. But also, you can't really have that emotional eating conversation without the body acceptance conversation. So I would love to just jump in there.
Yeah, totally. This is super, super the key. If you know, I think, I think working around emotional eating without talking about body image pretty much always falls flat. And the reasons for that also really kind of piggyback on what we just spoke about in the Beauty Bean interview, which is that so much of what triggers us to jump into the diet binge cycle, right? Like we don't jump into the diet binge cycle because we're trying to binge. We jump in it because we're trying to diet. And why the hell are we trying to diet is because we're trying to lose weight, right? Like we're trying to control our bodies. And so as opposed to letting our bodies be where they're going to be when we have a peaceful relationship with food or a quote unquote normal relationship with food, however you want to say it. And what triggers us, right? Like, so there's sometimes I think that there's moments when women are trying to give up dieting or trying to sort of get off of the cycle and sort of have this peaceful relationship with food. And they have these moments where they're like, oh my God, I can't stand it any second. I need to lose 5 pounds right now. I'm freaking out. And and even though they were fine yesterday, right? Like they were fine this morning. And then by the afternoon, something happened where they just immediately just
looked in a funny mirror, or their pants were a little tight.
Yeah, they just launched into this anxiety. Trigger, like, oh my God, need to lose weight right now. Let's do this. So, and that's where it really becomes important to have conversations about body image so we don't get trapped, so we don't get so that trigger, so we can start to really like deal with those body image triggers that are ultimately sort of keeping this diet binge cycle in place for most women. So that's where I will start. But yeah, I mean, like I said in the Beauty Bean interview, I think a lot of this has to do with control, but I'll wait for you to prompt me on that.
So, something I'm curious about, kind of staying on this topic. So, knowing your story and about how you kind of came to this self-love through, like, as a backhanded way to lose weight through self-love, right? And you talk about
that was how I originally discovered that body image was important, which was kind of hilarious and ironic, but
right. But however you get there, it's like
exactly.
So what I'm curious about from a business standpoint, you are not a weight loss product. You don't promote that. That's not what you market yourself as. Although the people who need you most aren't searching for fat acceptance and body acceptance at all, probably. So how do you target those people? And I would just love to know how you find and get the attention of the people who really need you. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so this is really a great question. I feel like I'm giving away my business secrets a little bit, but I will share them with you. So, I mean, really, here's the bottom line is that, yes, women want to lose weight desperately, and I understand that, and most wellness professionals understand that, and they will pander to people telling them, I promise I can make you thin, I promise I can make you thin. When the truth is, no one can promise anyone can make anyone thin, right? Like that is just not something that anyone is capable of, and I'm certainly not going to lie. I mean, I'm certainly, and not that everyone's lying. I mean, I think some people are really much more, some products are of course more geared towards that is their goal as well as yours. Making you thin isn't even one of my goals, right? Like so I am very different than other people in that capacity, right? Like some people really are, intentionally trying to help you lose weight. I am not, right? Like my goal is to help you stop being crazy around food. Now, do some people lose weight as a result of not being crazy around food and ending emotional eating? Yeah, some people do lose weight. And do some people not lose weight? Yeah, some people don't lose weight. And that's really the kind of what I'm trying to grapple with in my marketing is that, I really want to focus on helping you create, happiness and peace in your body and with food. And wherever your body physically ends up when that happens is where it's sort of meant to be. That's sort of my belief. If your relationship with food is healthful and normal, and, it's the relationship with food that you ultimately want for yourself that helps you feel sane, then that is the weight that you are meant to be is the weight that you are going to land at when you arrive at that relationship with food. So from a marketing standpoint, I don't focus really on the weight at all. I mean, when you first come to my website, everything's about food because I want the sort of goal, if you will, what I'm selling is have a peaceful relationship with food. Like stop being crazy over food. Because when women come to my website, that's what they think their problem is. I can't control myself around food. So I can help you deal with your food problem, right? Like I can help you stop feeling crazy about food. That I know I can do. What happens to your weight when that happens is dependent on your body type, your genetic constitution. I have no idea what's going to happen to your weight when you have that sort of natural, peaceful, just healthful relationship with food that I think we all really crave more than anything else.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so alluring about you because the way that you speak and the way that you position yourself is just so like, oh my God, that's me for so many people. And I think that right there will just draw people in. And the other thing that came up for me when you were talking about this, something that you've worked with me that I really want to share is that whatever that, we'll call it your set point weight, the weight that you're supposed to be at naturally or whatever. When you get there, I know a big fear for me was like, okay, I love my body now, or I love this body that I want, or whatever it is for you. But then there's that fear of like, okay, I've got the self-love thing down now, I've got the body acceptance down now, but like if I were to be different, that would go away. And you really coached me, and I'd love to go even deeper on this, on like, that's not gonna go away. That if you are working that self-love practice, if you are working that body love acceptance, no matter where you are on that spectrum, like that's not going to go away. You're not going to be like, oh, I liked it this morning, but I don't like it now. Like that's a fear thing. And so I'd love if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, ultimately, the goal of doing body image work in general is for us to get to a place where no matter what weight we are, we're okay, because we're no longer letting our weight dictate how we get to feel about ourselves as a person. We no longer let our weight dictate our core self-esteem, right? And dictate our core self-worth. And most chronic dieters very much tie those two things together, right? We wouldn't bother having this like hellish relationship with food where we're constantly trying to lose weight and constantly putting ourselves through such a ringer in order to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds unless it was desperate, right? Unless we were desperate to lose weight, unless we were really desperate to control our body weight because of how we thought that it was going to make us feel or what we thought we were going to get once we had that body, or, you know, what we thought maybe we would lose if we lost that body. So the whole point of doing body image work is to get to the place where like that we like legitimately don't really care that much about what our natural set point is, because whatever our natural set point is, like, we know that we are going to be just fine. We can still get married, we can still have whatever job we want, we can still wake up every morning like feeling really cool and funny and like people like us. You know, it doesn't, our how we judge ourselves is not tied to weight anymore, which is, you know, challenging. I mean, again, it's challenging for emotional eaters. Yeah, it's work because emotional eaters, I mean, we wouldn't be emotional eaters if we weren't obsessed with our weight, period. If we didn't believe that our weight got to, you know, dictate how we felt about ourselves, we would not have this emotional eating problem to begin with. Like, one created the other. The body image problem was actually the beginning of this whole diet binge, emotional eating, food problem, right? If we never had a moment where we're like, my thighs are too fat, maybe I should go on a diet, none of this shit would have even happened. So that's a really like important thing for people to understand, is that you actually, if you really boil down your food problem, you think you have a food problem, but really that food problem wouldn't even exist if you didn't one day, you know, however many years ago, think, I'm a little too fat, I need to go on a diet.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's something that is so not our fault. It comes in from a super young age. So many people deal with, right? So, and so many people who are dealing with that don't want the body acceptance talk. They're like, I don't want that, I just want to lose weight. So how do you, what are some, like, I would love to give a couple takeaways or tips for people on, maybe they're slightly open to it, maybe they're slightly willing to this, like, okay, that girl seems legit, like, she seems like she's really happy and cool and she accepts her body, like, they seem great. Like, what are some takeaways to just get started? Because like we were saying, it's work to accept your body in that way and really honor it and accept how it is. So what are some takeaways to get started doing that work?
Okay. So honestly, probably the first thing to just acknowledge and just realize, and this was probably the first time I ever even got hip to the idea of, you know, body acceptance really beyond sort of, well, so there's two things. So the first time somebody ever actually made me open to body acceptance is what you were kind of alluded to last time, which was I was working with Sarah Jenks, who's a genius, and she kind of alerted me to this concept of live more, weigh less, right? Like, you are sitting around at home feeling like shit about yourself, and instead of going out and having fun and making your life better, you are staying home alone, probably eating Haagen-Dazs, right? Because you feel fat. So, like, first of all, it's just sort of like, this is kind of trickery, but kind of seeing like, oh yeah, I see the connection between feeling fat and eating more, right? Like, I think that's a really easy thing for women to get on board with, even those who just want to lose weight and don't want body acceptance at all. I think that even that woman can see that feeling fat doesn't actually help make you thin for a lot of women. Like, it just triggers the eating that much more. So that's sort of like number one. Yeah. Number two is understanding and realizing, because it's all about willingness in the beginning, right? Like, there's no point in me even talking to you about body image strategies unless you want to improve your body image, right? Like, unless you want to improve your body image, I can't even start talking to you about how to do it, because it will just completely fall on deaf ears, right? Willingness is like all that really matters in the beginning. It's like 85% willingness. So the other thing I would say to you is, for those women who are feeling like, I don't want body acceptance, I just want to lose weight, like, I want you to really think about where that mentality has gotten you so far. You know, like, seriously, like, is this working? Right. You know, like, is being obsessed with your weight and like having this desperation to lose weight all the time, made you happier in the past however many years? Has it made you thinner in the past however many years? And I know some women will answer the question, has it made me thinner? And be like, well, yeah, I've gone on diets and then I'll lose 10 pounds. And then, you know, maybe I'll fall off the diet and I'll gain, you know, the 10 pounds back or whatever. You know, they're on this like cycle, right? But I could theoretically lose weight. I'm like, okay, but like again, you're miserable. Right. Yeah, exactly. You're miserable. Like you're miserable.
Sanity or thinness?
Yes. Yes. That's a really big question to ask yourself is like, is it worth it? And for some women, I think that they will, you know, I think a lot of women will also hear that and say, it's worth it because I completely, absolutely refuse to quote unquote get fat, even though they don't even like, we tend to have like really fatalistic thinking about what get fat means. Like I refuse to let myself go. So I must just have to stay crazy and be insane. Like I have no choice but to stay on this diet binge cycle because, you know, being fat is even worse. Like being fat is like the worst thing in the world. And it's just funny because well, it's not funny, but it's just something to, I would say to that person, like, stay in the moment, like, stay where you are. Like, you're thinking about this really, like, you're getting so fatalistic about this whole concept around body acceptance, like, that the minute you decide to like yourself, you're going to blow up to 300 pounds. Like, that's not probably what's going to happen, you know? Yeah. And I mean, even if it did, we can talk about that more, right? Like, you know how I feel that fear of fat, right? It really like keeps us into this diet mentality. But I just think that like in the very beginning, right? So just to be clear, I'm not talking about advanced body image stuff right now. That's maybe episode 2. Right now I'm talking to, you know, the woman who's just starting to maybe open their eyes to how to get off the diet binge cycle. And that's another thing to just sort of, I think that in the beginning, it is really important to like be where you are and like relinquish this whole idea of like, well, if I do this, all hell will break loose. Really, all hell will break loose? Like, no, like nothing bad's going to happen to you this week.
Right.
You know, like your body's not going to look any different if you just give up the restrictions just for the day.
Yeah.
So that's also helpful, I think, in the beginning.
So shifting a little bit to normal eating, or not even really shifting because it's all kind of about the same thing. So I'm curious about when it comes to normal eating, I'd like to use myself like as an example here. So being at a place where I feel like I rather feel the feeling or I rather cope in another way. So I'm not turning to food. Maybe sometimes I do, but not all the time. And really, part of that came from the sense of that doesn't make me feel great, and I have so much that I want to do and like work in the world, so I like don't want to do that. I rather cope in another way. So where does that fall into the normal eating spectrum? Like, is that a normal thing that someone who never dealt with this type of mindset would be, or is it's still disordered in some way?
So somebody who, I mean, no, I think that that's pretty normal. I mean, somebody who has never dealt with emotion, you know, somebody who's not a quote unquote emotional eater, like just normal eaters. And I always tell people when it comes to normal eating, like, look for normal eaters in your life and start like just just copying them or just being like, wow, that's so interesting that they do that. Like, you know, a lot of people, the normal eaters in their life are men, because men don't, you know, again, there's always exceptions. I think more and more men are dealing with body image stuff, and thus they're dealing with diet binge stuff. But generally speaking, this is a somewhat gendered issue, only by virtue of the fact that women do have more social and cultural pressure they have this more women more strongly get the message that their weight is tied to their core self-esteem, right? Like women tend to tie their weight to their core self-esteem and to sort of value themselves based on their weight more often than men. Men value themselves on other superficial shit, like how much money they make and whatever else. I mean, we've all got our things. But So, a lot of women, I say, look at the men in your life and like notice how they eat. And normal eaters, I think a normal eater kind of does exactly what you're saying, but it's just not as conscious.
Right.
Like it's automatic for them.
Right.
They're barely even thinking about it.
Yeah.
First of all, food isn't the autopilot go-to response for them.
Right.
But if they were to think about like, maybe if they're at the office or whatever and someone's like passing around the cookies and they're, not hungry or don't need a cookie, they might just pass one up because they just know it's not going to make them feel good. And it's not even so, it's again, it's just not as conscious as, oh, I shouldn't have the cookie because of da 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 da. It's just, it's an automatic response of like, no, I'm working. I don't want a cookie right now.
Yeah. That's
kind
really
of like,
interesting.
Yeah, like, oh my God, well, I'm working. Obviously, I don't want a shot of tequila right now. Like
Right.
that obvious.
Exactly.
And I think that, essentially emotional eaters, we learn that over time. We learn that through non-judgmental awareness of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, at least, it's something that it's becoming intuitive now, but I still have like, oh wow, like, oh, that it's almost surprising, like, because it was so ingrained for so long. So it's like, oh, I don't even want that. Wow, like, all right, like, is that normal? Like, it's like I'm questioning it, even though I'm like into the normal. So that's super interesting.
Yeah,
so,
that's an exciting place to be. Like that moment where you're like, oh my God, I literally don't want that cupcake. Like,
and it's like so weird.
That's how I get people to sign up for my programs because I think that this is like sales and marketing genius, is that like, if you tell a woman that she could look at a cupcake and not want it, that's pretty powerful stuff. I don't need to promise you that you're going to lose weight, but I can tell you that I can get you to look at a cupcake and literally not want it. Yeah. That's powerful.
And think, I love myself too much to eat that right now.
Yeah. Or like not even, or like I legitimately don't even want it. Like like that's like, sometimes I like look at food, like sometimes I'll order like pasta Alfredo at a restaurant. And I think a lot of women say, oh my God, I would never order that at a restaurant because if I ate the whole plate, and that would be like, 4 days worth of food, like in their crazy heads. So, and, in my head, it's like, I can order a pasta Alfredo and like, I might even just have like a few bites if it's really rich. And then I'm just done. I do not even want it. I don't want it. And trust me, you're looking at somebody who is like clean plate club, like, and beyond for their entire life. And I'm now in a place where legitimately, like, I will look at, any number of non-diet foods that you can think of. And my body is just like, ugh, no. Like it's now automatic response to say no on many occasions, which I think that's why, I think that's ultimately going back to your very first question. I think that's why women want to work with me.
Yeah.
I think that's the selling point.
I mean, I think you gave away your business secrets, but also we just created some great marketing material for you because you got me there too, and I, just like a year ago, like never thought I would be there ever. Yeah. And it's crazy. And that's what I was trying to really convey there. It's like, you look at those things and you're like, whoa, like that's kind of weird. I don't even want that. Like, and that's what I was wondering. Is that normal? But that's just like contrast of I was in this place for so long and now it's so different. That feels weird because they're so different.
That's just like a gift, right? It's like a miracle. Like people email me and they're like, oh my God, I had, somebody got me a birthday cake and I had like half a slice and I literally didn't even want to finish it. That is insane. Like, that's a really exciting part of somebody's program is when they get to that place where they're like, holy God, like I can't believe that I actually I don't even need to control myself around this. I don't even, it's insane. I mean, that's the miracle. That is the miracle.
Yeah, it really is. So, last thing I want to talk about that's pretty timely, and you wrote a blog post about this before Thanksgiving, but with the holidays are now, and there's so much in our industry and kind of in this wellness online world, there's a lot of talk about staying healthy in the holidays and all of that type of thing. So I would love to get your thoughts on that and your thoughts on normal eating, really just keeping up with normal eating during the holidays and staying not crazy around food when a lot of like triggers and a lot of people who have stuff around food will be around you and not to kind of let that Post-it note onto you.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways I could take that question. I think that like for example, if you are trying to get off the diet binge cycle, so you're trying to essentially stop dieting and sort of drop the restrictions around food, and you are in a place where a big trigger for you is the expectations of other people, right? Which is a huge trigger for everyone, right? Like I want to control my mother, or my mom, or I know that so and so is going to comment on my weight, or I know that so and so is going to comment on the foods that I'm eating, or whatever it is.
Yep.
There's a few different strategies for dealing with people's expectations around the holidays, which really I think is one of the bigger issues that people face during that time of year. I think I'll just name two things that I think are really powerful strategies right off the bat. One is compassion, right? Like if somebody's commenting on your weight and commenting on your food, like they have no idea what the fuck is going on. Like they are, they just are kind of living on a different planet than you. They have no idea what you're doing as far as the work that you're trying to do with getting off of this diet binge cycle. They have no idea what's helpful to you. They think they're doing their best. And they don't, they just don't know any better. When somebody will say to me something like, people will tell me, I tell them I'm a health coach or that I work in, nutrition or whatever. And people will always try and say things to me like, oh, like blah, de blah. I know, like I was so bad today. I ate the grain, I ate the bread on the table or whatever. They don't really know.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I just like let it go because I think that it's helpful instead of looking at that person of like, what if they're right and I'm wrong? And this whole like intuitive eating thing is bullshit. And like, I really should stop eating great. Like, I think it's very easy to get triggered into that mindset. And one way to diffuse that is to just be like, oh, she's, my mom's trying her best and she doesn't really know what she's talking about, but I appreciate the effort because I know that she's only doing this out of either love for me or B, not so much compassion for herself. Like those are the two times when I hear of parents making comments to people about their food or their weight. Is when they're either legitimately just trying to help, like they are just trying to help and they just don't know how, or they're dealing with their own issues around food and weight and kind of projecting it. And in either of those situations, the answer really is compassion. In either of those situations, I think, compassion for people who don't quote unquote get it is a really helpful strategy to not get sucked back into, well, what if they're right and I'm wrong? And, oh my gosh, I should, try and change what I'm doing. And now I'm triggered to diet. It's like, just be like, oh, like, poor mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's that same way of talking with yourself. It's shifting that from, oh, that's so bad, you are emotional eating and that's so bad, to, oh, like, what do you need to feel? Like, honey, like, and same having that conversation with other people too.
Right. Like they're always either legitimately trying to help you or in pain themselves. I mean, like without exception, it is one of those two things.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two is, I think, in general, I think that, you are probably going to eat a little bit more on days when you're surrounded by like good, yummy foods that you're not usually exposed to. And that is normal, right? Like even normal eaters, the most normal eaters in the world eat a little bit more in the holidays. And that's fine. I think that the holidays for me are so different. I don't even think I really eat that much more during the holidays ever. I mean, maybe I'll have like more set dinner plans. So I have more meals where I can't control whether or not like I'm going to be hungry for them or whatever. But generally speaking, I don't even eat more during the holidays. I mean, food is just such a non-issue at this point that I'm way more concerned about, quote unquote, like the quote unquote real problems, right? And I think that that's another helpful thing for emotional eaters to remember is like when we start getting obsessed with food, like what's the real problem? Like what's actually happening? Like, are we freaking out because we haven't had alone time in a week because we're staying at our parents' house with 30 extended relatives? Like what are we actually feeling? What needs our attention? Like, how can we take care of ourselves during the holidays when our routine gets screwed up?
Right.
And that has nothing to do with food. Like I'm not talking about a routine with food. I don't really have a routine with food at all. Some people do. That's cool. I just really don't. My schedule is nuts. But there's always things that we can be doing. Like, there's certain things that I try to do to take care of myself, right? And just like stay connected with my needs. And oftentimes when we're surrounded by people, it's hard, or in a new environment, not in our homes, we have to really remember to take care of our needs. So when the food gets really loud and we start like thinking about eating everything, another question that's important to ask myself is, what is the unmet need here? Like what am I trying to feed?
Yeah. It all goes back to figuring out that feeling you don't want to feel, defining it, and deciding. I could go with food. I could go with cocaine. I could go with a magazine. I could go with calling a friend. There's lots of choices there. So figure out the feeling first, and then it's up to you.
Right, exactly. And then you're an adult. You get to decide how you want to deal with that feeling.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, so good, Isabel. This is amazing. So
good.
Everybody probably already knows where to find you, but go ahead and tell them again, and I'll put all the links below.
Okay, cool. So my website, isabelfoxenduke.com, and the link's below, so I won't spell it out like I did last time. I would really highly recommend, if any of this resonates for you guys, downloading my guide, How to Not Eat Cake Really Fast Standing Up When Nobody's Looking, which is sort of the ultimate how to not binge eat guide. And that's a really, really great place to start. It will also get you on my list for coaching emails, which I send out like once every week or two. I try to keep them really solid, valuable content and just stuff that's going to be, oh, thank you, Katie. Yeah, I really try to just keep it stuff that's going to help you out. It
does. It really does. I mean, every time I get one of your emails in my inbox, I legitimately either open it right then and read it. But if I don't have time, I flag it and go back to it because I know it's something that I needed in the moment and I needed to hear it. So it's like, sign up for your email updates for sure. Download that. And if you really want to take this to the next level, if you want to get to that place where Isabel and I were talking about, that's legitimately amazing and kind of surprising, work with her and see if working with her would be right for you. So
thanks for the plug.
Yeah, of course. So thank you again for being here. Thanks for everybody for watching. And if you have more questions for Isabel, that she's going to come back because I love interviewing her and I love talking with her. So if you have something that you'd like us to dive into next time, leave us a comment below and we will get to that for you. Diddy diddy daddy do, diddy dum. Watch 'em come when I shake my bum bum. I'm that.